My hands shake as I adjust the rearview mirror for the third time in 10 minutes, checking my lipstick, a soft coral shade my daughter insisted would bring out the warmth in my eyes. At 63, I never imagined I'd be sitting in a parking lot, heart hammering like a teenager's before prom. The restaurant glows invitingly through the dusty Arizona evening, its warm lights promising shelter from both the desert wind and my growing anxiety. "You're being ridiculous, Margaret," I whisper to my reflection, smoothing down hair that refuses to cooperate in this dry heat. But am I? After 38 years of marriage to Frank, 2 years of widowhood, and countless evenings eating dinner alone while the news drones on, perhaps ridiculous is exactly what I need. My phone buzzes, a text from Janet, my neighbor who set up this blind date. "Remember, his name is William, retired engineer, lost his wife 3 years ago, very kind. You'll know him by his blue shirt." Blue shirt, such a simple detail to hang my hopes on. I grab my purse, the good leather one I saved for special occasions when Frank was alive, and step into the evening. The wind catches my dress, and I feel exposed, vulnerable in a way I haven't experienced in decades. Every step toward the restaurant door feels monumental, as if I'm crossing into unknown territory. Inside, the hostess greets me with a practiced smile. "Table for one?" "Actually, I'm meeting someone. William?" My voice sounds foreign to my own ears, higher pitched with nerves. She nods toward a corner booth where a man sits alone, studying the menu through wire-rimmed glasses. He's wearing blue as promised, and when he looks up at our approach, his face breaks into a gentle smile that reaches his eyes. Something familiar flickers there, but I dismiss it as wishful thinking. "Margaret?" He stands, his stance firm, weathered by years of work, and warm in a way that surprises me. "I'm William." "Billy, actually, but Janet thought William sounded more dignified." I laugh despite my nerves. "Billy suits you better." And it does, somehow. There's something boyish about the way he ducks his head slightly when he smiles. We settle into the booth, and I notice how he waits for me to sit first, how he signals the waitress with subtle courtesy. These small gestures of consideration feel almost foreign after so many solitary meals. "I have to admit," Billy says, folding his hands on the table, "I haven't done this in, well, ever, really. Helen and I met in high school, been together 42 years before she passed." The honesty in his voice disarms me completely. 38 years for Frank and me, college sweethearts. I trace the rim of my water glass. It's strange, isn't it, starting over at our age? Strange, but maybe necessary. He tilts his head, studying me with those kind eyes. "You remind me of someone, but I can't quite place it." Something flutters in my chest, recognition mixed with impossibility. I push the feeling aside and focus on the menu, though the words blur slightly as I become hyper-aware of his presence across from me. The way he hums softly while reading, the careful way he sets down his glass, the faint scent of aftershave that's different from Frank's but somehow comforting. Our conversation flows easier than I expected. We talk about our children. His 2 daughters live in Seattle, mine scattered across the country like seeds on wind. We discuss books, the weather, the challenges of maintaining houses that suddenly feel too large and too quiet. Billy has an engineer's precision in his speech, but there's warmth underneath, a gentle humor that catches me off guard. "I built model trains for 30 years, he tells me over dinner. Had a whole setup in the garage. After Helen died, I couldn't bear to look at it. Gave it all to my grandson last Christmas." Frank collected coins, I share. Thousands of them, organized in albums he'd never let me touch. I donated them to the local museum last month. It felt like letting go of a piece of him, but also freeing. He nods with understanding. The hardest part isn't missing them. It's learning how to be just ourselves again. Just ourselves. The phrase settles between us like a bridge spanning decades of coupled identity. For the first time in 2 years, I feel seen, not as Frank's widow, but as Margaret, just Margaret. The wind outside grows stronger, rattling the windows. Through the glass, I can see dust swirling in the parking lot, caught in the restaurant's lights like golden snow. The waitress approaches our table with a concerned expression. "Folks, I hate to interrupt, but we're getting reports of a dust storm moving in from the west. Might want to think about heading home soon if you're driving any distance." Billy and I exchange glances. "Where do you live?" he asks. "Scottsdale. You?" "Phoenix, but my car's been making noise all week. I was planning to take it to the shop Monday." He runs his hand through silver hair that's thinning at the crown, but still thick enough to catch the restaurant's warm light. I probably shouldn't risk driving in a storm with an unreliable engine. The logical response would be to suggest he call a cab, wish him well, and drive myself home safely. But something in his expression, not panic, but quiet resignation, touches a part of me I thought had died with Frank's last breath. "I could drive you home," I hear myself saying. "I mean, if you're comfortable with that. My car's reliable." His eyebrows raise. "Margaret, that's incredibly kind, but Phoenix is an hour away in good weather. I couldn't ask you to." "You're not asking, I'm offering." The certainty in my voice surprises us both. Besides, what's the alternative? You spending the night in the restaurant? He smiles, and there's that flicker of familiarity again, stronger now. "Are you always this decisive?" "Frank used to say I was too stubborn for my own good." I reach for my purse. Sometimes stubbornness looks a lot like caring. Outside, the dust storm is already beginning to obscure the streetlights. Billy insists on paying the check, despite my protests, and we hurry to my car as the wind whips around us. He's surprisingly spry for a man who must be near 70, opening my door for me before jogging around to the passenger side. "This is going to be quite an adventure," he says, buckling his seatbelt. I start the engine, checking my mirrors one more time. At our age, I think we've earned the right to a few adventures. The storm hits in full force just as we reach the highway. The world outside disappears into a wall of swirling dust and debris. I slow to a crawl, following the taillights of the car ahead like a lifeline. My knuckles are white on the steering wheel, and I'm grateful for Billy's calm presence beside me. "Take the next exit," he says quietly. "We can wait it out at a gas station." But when we reach the exit, visibility is so poor, I nearly miss the ramp entirely. The gas station is closed, its windows dark and forbidding. We sit in my car, engine running, heat blasting against the cold that seems to seep in despite our closed windows. "I'm sorry," Billy says. "This isn't exactly how I pictured the evening ending." I turn to look at him, this man I met only hours ago, but who somehow feels like more than a stranger. "How did you picture it ending?" He's quiet for a long moment, and when he speaks, his voice is softer. "Honestly, I thought we'd shake hands politely, agree we had a nice time, and never see each other again. First dates at our age, they usually feel like job interviews for companionship. And this doesn't?" "No." He looks at me directly, and in the dashboard light, I see something that makes my breath catch. This feels like coming home after a very long trip. The storm rages around us, but inside the car, something settles, something warm and unexpected and terrifying in its possibility. I reach across the console and place my hand over his, feeling the slight tremor that could be age or emotion or both. "Then let's get you home," I say. The visibility improves just enough after an hour's wait for us to continue, though we're crawling along at 30 miles per hour with hazard lights flashing. Billy becomes my navigator, his calm voice guiding me through streets I can barely see. The storm has transformed familiar landscapes into alien territory, and I find myself depending on his steady presence in a way that should frighten me, but instead feels natural. Left at the next light, he says, leaning forward to peer through the windshield, though I'm not sure you'll be able to see it until we're almost there. My back aches from the tension of driving hunched over the wheel, squinting through the swirling dust. What should have been an hour drive has stretched into its third hour, and my usual bedtime came and went somewhere around Tempe. But I'm not tired. I'm exhilarated in a way I haven't felt in years, as if this storm has stripped away all the careful boundaries I've built around my widow's life. Tell me about your trains, I say, needing his voice to anchor me as the wind rocks my car. He chuckles. You really want to hear about model trains at midnight in a dust storm? I really do. So he tells me about N-scale locomotives and hand-painted figures, about tiny towns he created with meticulous detail, complete with working streetlights and miniature people living their impossibly small lives. His voice grows animated as he describes the mountain landscape he built, with tunnels and bridges and a waterfall made from clear plastic and blue lights. Helen used to tease me about playing with toys, he says, but it wasn't playing exactly. It was creating a world where everything ran on schedule, where problems had solutions, where you could control the outcome. I understand this completely. After Frank's diagnosis, I threw myself into organizing closets, photo albums, the medicine cabinet. Creating order in small spaces when the larger world felt chaotic and frightening. What was your favorite part, I ask. The depot, he says without hesitation. I must have spent 200 hours on that building alone. Hand-carved details, working doors, tiny benches where passengers waited for trains that always arrived on time. There's something wistful in his voice that makes me glance at him. In the dashboard light, his profile reminds me of someone, but the memory remains frustratingly just out of reach. You could build another one, I suggest. Start over. At my age, my hands aren't as steady as they used to be, he flexes his fingers. Besides, I'm not sure I want to create another perfect world. Maybe it's time to learn to live in this imperfect one. The honesty of his statement hits me like the wind buffeting my car. How many perfect worlds have I tried to create and maintain? The perfect marriage, the perfect home, the perfect widow's routine of grocery shopping on Tuesdays and library visits on Fridays. There, Billy points ahead, the blue house with white shutters, though you probably can't see the shutters in this mess. I pull into his driveway, noting the well-maintained lawn, the precise edges where grass meets sidewalk. Even in the storm, his house looks orderly, cared for. Like Frank's workshop used to look before his illness made precision impossible. Margaret, Billy turns to face me, and something in his voice makes my hand still on the steering wheel. I need to tell you something. My heart stutters. Here it comes, the revelation that he's not actually widowed, or he's moving to Florida next week, or he's simply going to thank me for the ride and disappear into his tidy life. I wasn't entirely honest about how we met, he continues. Janet didn't just randomly think of me for you, he continues. The storm outside seems to quiet, or maybe I'm just holding my breath. I saw you at Frank's funeral. The words hit me like physical blows. I turn to stare at him, and suddenly the familiarity clicks into place. The man in the back row of the church, the one who'd caught my attention because he stood when others sat, who sang the hymns without looking at the book. You were there, I whisper. Frank and I worked for the same engineering firm, different departments. I knew him for 20 years, but I don't think you and I ever officially met. We were always at different company picnics, different retirement parties. He swallows hard. But I remembered you. I remembered how you stood at his graveside, how you thanked every single person who came to pay respects, how you held yourself together even when your world was falling apart. My mind reels. You asked Janet to introduce us? I asked Janet if she thought, if maybe after some time had passed, if you might be ready for companionship. His hands fidget with his seatbelt. I lost Helen 6 months before Frank died. I understood what you were going through in a way most people couldn't. I should feel manipulated, deceived. Instead, I feel something else entirely, a recognition of careful kindness, of someone who understood grief intimately enough to wait, to approach it gently, rather than with the careless suggestions of well-meaning friends who couldn't fathom the depth of loss. "You've been watching me," I say, not accusingly, but with wonder. "I've been hoping you might heal," he corrects. "There's a difference." Thunder rumbles overhead, and the first drops of rain begin to spatter against the windshield. The dust storm is transitioning, becoming something cleaner, more hopeful. "Why didn't you just introduce yourself at the funeral?" "Because you needed time to be Frank's widow completely before you could be anything else." His voice is gentle. "And because I needed time to be something other than Helen's widower." The rain increases, washing the dust from my windshield, clearing the view. I can see Billy's house properly now. The careful landscaping, the porch light glowing warmly, the rocking chair where I imagine him sitting with his morning coffee. "Are you angry?" he asks quietly. I consider this, examining my feelings like I used to examine Frank's coin collections, holding them up to the light, checking for authenticity. Am I angry? Surprised, yes. Moved by his thoughtfulness? Absolutely. But angry? No, I realize. I'm grateful. Grateful? That someone understood, that someone cared enough to wait. I turn off the engine, that someone saw me as more than just a widow to be pitied. The rain drums on the roof now, washing away the last of the storm's fury. In its place is a cleaner darkness, full of possibility. "Would you like to come in for coffee?" Billy asks. I know it's late, but after that drive. Every sensible part of me says to decline, to drive home to my empty house and my predictable routines. But tonight has already shattered my sensible life, and I discover I'm not ready to return to it just yet. "Yes," I say, "I'd like that very much." We run through the rain to his front door, laughing like children as we get soaked in the few yards between car and house. Billy fumbles with his keys, and I stand close enough to smell the rain in his hair, to feel the warmth radiating from his body. Inside, his house is exactly what I expected, clean, organized, but with the hollow feeling of a space that's been too quiet for too long. The furniture is practical rather than welcoming, and I can see where Helen's touches have been carefully preserved. A throw pillow here, a ceramic bowl there, like museum pieces in his daily life. "The coffee's in the kitchen," he says, suddenly seeming uncertain about having me in his private space. "Unless you'd prefer tea, I think I have some somewhere." Coffee's perfect. I follow him down a hallway lined with family photos, Billy and Helen at various ages, daughters in graduation gowns, grandchildren blowing out birthday candles, a life fully lived, but finished. The kitchen is spotless, everything in its place. Billy moves efficiently, measuring coffee with the precision I'd expect from an engineer. I stand at the window, watching the rain wash the last dust from the glass, making everything clear again. "Margaret?" His voice is closer than I expected. I turn to find him standing just behind me, close enough that I can see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, close enough that I have to tilt my head slightly to meet his gaze. "I want you to know," he says carefully, "that I don't have any expectations about tonight, about any of this. I wanted to spend time with you, to see if what I thought I saw at the funeral was real." "What did you think you saw?" "Strength," he says immediately. "Grace under impossible circumstances. A woman who could drive strangers through sandstorms because it was the right thing to do." He pauses. "Beauty that had nothing to do with age or appearance and everything to do with character." My breath catches. When was the last time someone saw me, really saw me, rather than just Frank's widow, or someone's mother, or the woman who lived alone in the house with the rose garden. I see something too, I whisper. What? A man who builds perfect worlds in miniature because he understands that real life is messy and unpredictable, who goes to funerals of coworkers' husbands because he knows what it feels like to lose everything, who waits 2 years to ask for an introduction because he respects grief enough to let it run its course. The coffee maker gurgles behind us, but neither of us moves. The space between us feels charged with possibility and terror and the strange intimacy that comes from surviving storms together. I'm scared, I admit. So am I. What are we scared of? He considers this seriously. Of dishonoring what we had before, of not being enough for each other, of starting something we're too old to see through. All valid fears, rational fears. But as I stand in Billy's kitchen with rain washing the windows clean and the scent of coffee filling the air, I realize there's something I'm more afraid of than any of those possibilities. I'm most scared of going home to my empty house and pretending tonight didn't change anything, I tell him. He reaches out tentatively, his fingers barely grazing my cheek. Then don't go home yet. We drink our coffee in his living room, sitting on opposite ends of his sofa, like teenagers whose parents might walk in at any moment. The storm has passed, leaving behind the clean smell of rain and the sudden quiet that follows chaos. Billy has changed into dry clothes, khakis and a soft sweater that makes him look younger, more approachable. I've borrowed one of his dress shirts over my damp dress, and the intimacy of wearing his clothes feels both foreign and surprisingly natural. Tell me about Helen, I say, curling my legs under me. If we're going to do this, whatever this is, I need to understand what I'm stepping into. Billy's face softens with memory. She was a teacher, 4th grade for 37 years. Every September, she'd come home exhausted and exhilarated, telling me about her new batch of kids as if each class was the most special group she'd ever taught. He gets up and retrieves a framed photo from the mantel, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, her arm around Billy at what looks like a retirement party. She's laughing at something off camera, her head tilted back with unselfconscious joy. She sounds wonderful, I say, and mean it. There's no jealousy in this statement, only recognition of a life well lived and deeply mourned. She was, but she was also stubborn as hell, couldn't balance a checkbook to save her life, and sang off-key in the church choir for 20 years because she loved music more than she cared about hitting the right notes. This makes me laugh. Frank snored so loudly, I had to wear earplugs for the last 15 years of our marriage. And he never once put a dish in the dishwasher, just left everything on the counter next to it, like the 2 inches of distance was an insurmountable gap. Did you love him anyway? Because of it sometimes. The snoring meant he was there. The dishes meant he was eating my cooking and assuming I'd take care of the cleaning because that's how we divided our world. I sip my coffee, thinking. After he died, the silence was worse than the snoring, and the clean counters just looked empty. Billy nods. Helen organized everything by color, closet, bookshelves, even the spice rack. It drove me crazy when she was alive. I could never find anything because I thought alphabetically and she thought chromatically. Now I can't bear to reorganize because it would be like erasing her completely. We sit in comfortable silence, both of us inhabiting our memories while remaining present with each other. It's a delicate balance, honoring the past while acknowledging the possibility of a future. Can I ask you something personal? Billy says. I gesture for him to continue. How did you decide to say yes to tonight? To the blind date, I mean. Janet said you'd been turning down invitations for months. I set down my coffee cup, considering. My daughter called last Sunday. She's worried about me, thinks I'm too isolated. She wasn't wrong. I was becoming a hermit, finding excuses not to leave the house, not to engage with anyone beyond polite grocery store conversations. What changed your mind? I went to the cemetery on Tuesday, like I do every week. Usually, I talk to Frank, tell him about my week, ask his opinion on things, even though I know he can't answer. But this time, I pause, remembering the clarity of that moment. This time, I found myself asking him what he thought I should do about Janet's invitation. And I could almost hear his voice saying, "For God's sake, Maggie, go have dinner with the man. What's the worst that could happen?" Maggie? Billy's eyebrows raise. Frank called you Maggie? Only when he was exasperated with me or trying to make me laugh. I smile at the memory. Why? My middle name is Frank, he says quietly. William Franklin. Helen called me Billy Frank when she was exasperated with me or trying to make me laugh. The coincidence hits us both at the same time. Billy Frank, Maggie, as if our spouses had somehow conspired across the veil to bring us together, or at least to give us their blessing for what we're tentatively building between us. That's, I begin. Impossible, he finishes. And yet, we look at each other across the length of his sofa, and I see my own mixture of wonder and disbelief reflected in his eyes. The rational part of my mind dismisses it as coincidence, but there's another part, the part that drove through a sandstorm for a man I just met, the part that's sitting in his living room at 2 a.m. wearing his shirt, that wants to believe in impossible things. Are we crazy? I ask. Probably. He moves closer, just one cushion over, but close enough that I can feel the warmth of his body. Does it matter? Before I can answer, exhaustion hits me like a wave. The adrenaline of the storm, the emotional intensity of our revelations, the lateness of the hour all combine to make my eyelids impossibly heavy. I should go, I say, but make no move to leave. You should sleep, Billy corrects. The guest room is made up, clean sheets. You can't drive home safely when you're this tired. I should protest, should insist on calling a cab or pushing through my exhaustion to drive home. But the thought of navigating empty highways in the aftermath of the storm, of walking into my dark house alone, fills me with an unexpected dread. Are you sure? I'm sure. He stands, extending his hand to help me up. Fresh towels are in the hall closet. I'll make breakfast in the morning if you'd like. I take his hand, let him pull me to my feet. We're standing close again, and I'm struck by how natural this feels. Not like strangers navigating new territory, but like old friends falling into familiar rhythms. Billy, I say as he leads me toward the hallway. Yes? Thank you. For tonight, for understanding about Frank, for seeing me. He stops walking and turns to face me fully. In the soft light from the living room lamp, he looks younger, or maybe I'm seeing him the way Helen might have seen him. Not as an older man carrying the weight of loss, but as Billy, simply Billy. Thank you for driving me home, he says, for taking care of a stranger. You weren't a stranger, I realize as I say it. Not really, not ever. He leans forward and kisses my cheek, a gentle brush of lips that feels like a promise and a question all at once. His breath is warm against my skin, and I catch that same faint scent of aftershave, mixed now with rain and coffee, and something indefinably him. Good night, Maggie, he whispers. Good night, Billy Frank. I lie in his guest bed, a comfortable room decorated in blues and whites, clearly Helen's touch, but maintained with Billy's careful precision, listening to the sounds of him moving through his evening routine, water running in the master bathroom, the creak of floorboards, the soft sound of a book being set on a nightstand. Domestic sounds that should feel intrusive, but instead feel comforting, like falling asleep to a gentle symphony of companionship. Outside, the last of the storm winds down to occasional gusts, and I can hear water dripping from the eaves as the world cleans itself for tomorrow. I pull Billy's spare blanket up to my chin and breathe in the scent of fabric softener and something else, the indefinable smell of a life lived carefully, quietly, with attention to small details. I think about Frank, about what he would say if he could see me now. Would he be scandalized? Amused? I think he'd be relieved, actually. He worried about me in those final months, made me promise I wouldn't turn into one of those widows who stopped living when their husbands died. "Promise me you'll stay curious about life," he'd said during one of our late-night conversations when the pain medication made him philosophical. "Promise me you won't let grief become your only companion." At the time, I'd agreed because it seemed like the right thing to say, because I couldn't imagine a world where grief wouldn't be my primary emotion. But lying here in Billy's guest room, I realize I've kept that promise in ways I never expected. Tonight was curiosity made manifest. Curiosity about connection, about possibility, about whether the heart can expand to hold both loss and hope simultaneously. Sleep comes easier than I expected, and my last conscious thought is of Billy's voice saying my name. Not Margaret, formal and distant, but Maggie, with all the warmth and familiarity that nickname implies. As if he's known me longer than one evening, as if we have more history than shared grief in a sandstorm. As if this is a beginning rather than just a pleasant interlude in the careful routines of our separate, solitary lives. I wake to the smell of bacon and the sound of soft whistling from the kitchen. For a moment, I'm disoriented. This isn't my bedroom. This isn't Frank's off-key humming that usually accompanied his rare attempts at breakfast. Then memory floods back. The storm, the drive, Billy's gentle kiss goodnight. The clock on the nightstand reads 7:30, later than I've slept in months. At home, I'm usually awake by 6, going through the motions of a routine that stretches each day into manageable segments. Here, in Billy's guest room, with sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains, I feel oddly rested despite the emotional upheaval of the previous evening. I find my clothes dry and wrinkled, but presentable enough for the drive home. Billy's shirt hangs over the chair where I left it, and I smooth it carefully before folding it. Something about returning borrowed clothes feels significant, like the end of an interlude and the return to reality. In the bathroom, I splash water on my face and try to tame my hair with my fingers. Without makeup, with sleep creases on my cheek and silver roots showing more than usual, I look every one of my 63 years. It's sobering after feeling almost youthful in the warm glow of yesterday's unexpected romance. The whistling stops when I enter the kitchen, replaced by Billy's voice calling, "Good morning, Maggie. I hope you slept well." He's standing at the stove wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, looking more relaxed than the carefully dressed man I met at dinner. His hair is slightly mussed, and there's something intimate about seeing him in his morning routine, spatula in hand, coffee already brewing. Like the dead, I admit. I'm usually awake at 6, but your guest bed is remarkably comfortable. "Helen picked out that mattress," he says, then pauses as if surprised by his own words. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's okay." I move to stand beside him at the stove, close enough to see what he's cooking. "She had good taste." Relief crosses his features. She did. About most things, anyway. She never did understand my fascination with trains. Frank collected coins, but thought my gardening was a waste of time. "Why grow flowers you can't eat?" he'd say. But he still bragged to the neighbors about my roses. We're doing it again, weaving our lost spouses into the conversation naturally, without apology or awkwardness. It feels healthy, honest, like acknowledging the foundation that brought us to this point, rather than trying to pretend we're starting with blank slates. Billy plates the bacon alongside scrambled eggs and toast, and we sit at his small kitchen table as morning light streams through windows that are clean after the storm's washing. Everything looks sharper, more defined, as if the world has been given better focus. "Plans for today?" I ask, spreading jam on my toast. "Grocery store, laundry, exciting Saturday ahead." He grins. "You?" "Similar, plus I should check on my garden after the storm, and call my daughter to let her know the blind date wasn't a complete disaster." Was it a disaster at all? I consider this, looking at him across the table in his kitchen, wearing yesterday's clothes, but feeling more at home than I have anywhere in 2 years. "No," I say, "it wasn't a disaster at all." We eat in comfortable silence, occasionally commenting on the weather or the news program playing softly on his kitchen television. It's remarkably easy, this morning after routine, with someone I barely know but somehow feel completely comfortable with. Margaret? Billy sets down his coffee cup and looks at me seriously. I'd like to see you again, not because Janet thinks we'd be good together or because we're both lonely, because I enjoyed last night more than I've enjoyed anything in 3 years. My heart does something complicated, a flutter that's part joy, part terror. Even the Sandstorm part? Especially the Sandstorm part. His eyes crinkle with humor. You could have left me at the restaurant. Any reasonable person would have, but you didn't. And that tells me something important about who you are. What does it tell you? That you're someone who follows through, someone who doesn't abandon people when things get difficult. He reaches across the table and covers my hand with his. I'd like to get to know more about who you are, Maggie, if you're interested. The use of my nickname still catches me off guard, intimate and presumptuous, and somehow exactly right. I look at our joined hands, his weathered and strong, mine soft from years of hand cream, but marked with age spots I've stopped trying to hide. I'm interested, I hear myself saying, but I need you to know something. What? I'm terrified. The admission comes out in a rush. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with someone new without betraying Frank's memory. I don't know how to open my heart when I'm still learning how to live with the hole his death left. Billy's thumb strokes across my knuckles, a gesture so gentle it almost brings tears to my eyes. I don't know how to do any of that either, he says, but maybe we could figure it out together. No pressure, no expectations beyond seeing where this goes. One day at a time. One day at a time. I finish my coffee, acutely aware that this conversation is drawing our time together to a close. Soon I'll drive home to my empty house, and this will become memory rather than present reality. The thought fills me with unexpected reluctance. I should go, I say, though I make no move to stand. You should, he agrees, but doesn't release my hand. Billy? Yes. Would you like to have dinner again? Maybe somewhere we can arrive and leave separately without any sandstorms. His smile transforms his entire face. I'd like that very much. Tomorrow night? Tomorrow night. We walk to the door together, and I'm struck again by how natural this feels. The rhythm of our steps, the comfortable silence, the sense of partnership that developed somewhere between the storm and this morning's breakfast. Outside, the world looks washed and new. Billy's neighborhood, which I could barely see through the dust last night, reveals itself as well-maintained and quietly prosperous. Older homes with established trees and careful landscaping, the kind of place where people stay for decades and know their neighbors' names. Maggie? Billy catches my hand as I reach for my car door. Drive carefully. I will. And think about what you want to do tomorrow. My treat, anywhere you'd like to go. I start to protest that he paid for dinner last night, but something in his expression stops me. This matters to him, the providing, the taking care of details. It's a way of showing care that I recognize from my years with Frank. All right, I say, but I choose the place. Deal. He leans down and kisses my cheek again, but this time his lips linger just a moment longer, and when he pulls back, his eyes hold mine with an intensity that makes my breath catch. Until tomorrow, Maggie. Until tomorrow, Billy Frank. The drive home passes in a blur of conflicting emotions. Part of me wants to call Janet immediately and tell her about the evening, the storm, the revelation about Frank's funeral, the easy intimacy of breakfast conversation. But another part wants to keep it private, to hold these new feelings close until I understand what they mean. My house, when I pull into the driveway, looks smaller than I remembered. Not smaller physically, but somehow diminished, as if spending one night away has shifted my perspective on what home means. The roses by the front door survived the storm, though they're battered and muddy. I make a mental note to check on them after I've changed clothes and processed the seismic shift of the last 18 hours. Inside, everything is exactly as I left it. The book open on the coffee table, the single coffee cup in the sink, the silence that I've learned to navigate but never quite learned to love. For the first time in 2 years, the quiet feels oppressive rather than peaceful. I shower and change into fresh clothes, but I catch myself humming Billy's whistling tune from this morning. The melody follows me as I move through my routines, a soundtrack to memories that feel both brand new and strangely familiar. The phone rings just as I'm settling down with my second cup of coffee. "Mom?" My daughter Kate's voice sounds concerned. "How did the date go? I've been worried about you since you texted that you were staying out late." I'd forgotten about that text, sent hastily from Billy's driveway when I realized I'd be spending the night. Kate must have been imagining all sorts of scenarios, none of them involving sandstorms and borrowed clothes and breakfast conversations that felt like coming home. "It went well," I say, which is such an understatement it's almost laughable. "Well, that's it? Mom, you went on your first date in 40 years. I need details." Kate has always been my most direct child, the one who inherited Frank's engineer's mind and my stubborn streak. At 38, she's successful in her own right, but still worries about me with an intensity that sometimes feels suffocating. His name is Billy. He's a retired engineer, lost his wife 3 years ago. We had dinner, talked about books and children, and what it's like to be alone at our age. And we're having dinner again tomorrow night. The pause on Kate's end stretches long enough that I wonder if the call has dropped. "Mom," she says finally, "are you happy? You sound different." Different? Yes, I suppose I am different. Something fundamental shifted last night. Some carefully constructed wall between my past and my future developed a crack that's widening by the hour. "I think I might be happy," I admit, or at least I think I remember what happy feels like. "Oh, Mom," Kate's voice gets soft. "I'm so glad. Dad would be glad too. You know that, right?" I know. And I do know, have known since our conversation in the cemetery, since Billy's gentle understanding of grief's timeline. "Kate? Yeah? I love you for worrying about me, but I'm okay. Better than okay, maybe." After we hang up, I walk through my house with new eyes. The photos of Frank and me that line the hallway, the furniture we chose together, the accumulated debris of a shared life. None of it feels like a shrine anymore, or a prison. It feels like a foundation, solid and important and finished. I spend the afternoon in my garden, assessing storm damage and thinking about tomorrow night. Where do I want to go with Billy? Somewhere special enough to mark this new beginning, but not so formal that we can't talk easily. Somewhere that acknowledges the significance of what we're building without putting too much pressure on it. By evening, I've decided on the small Italian restaurant downtown, the one with candles on every table and a piano player who takes requests. Frank and I went there for anniversaries, but it doesn't feel like betrayal to take Billy there. It feels like evolution. I call Billy at 8 o'clock after spending an embarrassing amount of time debating whether 7:30 was too early and 8:30 too late. He answers on the second ring. "I was hoping you'd call," he says without preamble, and I can hear the smile in his voice. "Salvatore's," I tell him, "downtown, near the Arts District. 7 o'clock? I know the place. Helen and I went there a few times. Good choice." Another moment where our past lives intersect, where the four of us, Frank, Helen, Billy, and I, exist in the same space simultaneously. It should feel crowded, complicated. Instead, it feels like benediction. "Billy?" "Yes?" Today felt strange, good strange, but strange, being home alone after last night. I know exactly what you mean, he says quietly. My house felt too quiet today, too organized. I found myself looking forward to 7 o'clock tomorrow in a way I haven't looked forward to anything in years. Me too. We talk for another 20 minutes about inconsequential things, the weather, the news, whether I should wear the blue dress or the green one. But underneath the surface conversation runs a current of anticipation, of two people carefully building something precious and fragile and full of possibility. "Good night, Maggie," he says finally. "Good night, Billy Frank." I hang up the phone and realize I'm smiling, really smiling, not the polite expression I've worn like armor for 2 years, but something genuine and involuntary and bright. Tomorrow feels like a gift I didn't know I was allowed to unwrap. Sunday morning brings perfect weather, clear skies and mild temperatures that make yesterday's storm feel like something from another season entirely. I wake early, not from habit, but from excitement, and spend longer than usual choosing my outfit for dinner, still 8 hours away. The blue dress wins, the one Kate bought me last Christmas that I'd never worn because it seemed too festive for my widow's life. Today, it feels exactly right, sophisticated but not trying too hard, beautiful but comfortable enough for conversation that might stretch late into the evening. I'm arranging flowers from my garden, the roses that survived the storm, mixed with some late-blooming jasmine, when the doorbell rings. Through the peephole, I see a delivery truck pulling away and a large box sitting on my front step. Inside the box, nestled in tissue paper, is the most beautiful orchid I've ever seen. Deep purple blooms with white centers, potted in an elegant ceramic container. The card reads simply, "Thank you for the best evening I've had in years. Looking forward to tonight. Billy." I carry the orchid to my kitchen window where it catches the morning light perfectly. The gesture is thoughtful without being overwhelming, beautiful without being presumptuous. It speaks to the same careful consideration he showed in waiting 2 years to ask Janet for an introduction, the same attention to timing and appropriateness that makes me trust his intentions. The phone rings as I'm adjusting the orchid's position for the 3rd time. "Mom, you sound happy," Kate says without preamble. Do I? Definitely. And I wanted to apologize for interrogating you yesterday. Dad always said you were the best judge of character he knew. If you like this Billy, then I'm sure he's wonderful. Her approval shouldn't matter. I'm 63 years old, certainly capable of making my own decisions about men. But it does matter, more than I expected it to. Kate's blessing feels like permission to move forward without guilt. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means more to me than you know. Are you seeing him again?" "Tonight, actually. Dinner at Salvatore's." "Fancy. Should I expect another late-night text?" I laugh. "Probably not, but I'll call you tomorrow with details." The day stretches ahead with unusual sweetness. Simple tasks, grocery shopping, reading the newspaper, reorganizing my jewelry box, feel imbued with anticipation. I catch myself humming again, that same melody from Billy's kitchen, and realize I'm moving through my routine with a lightness I'd forgotten was possible. At 5 o'clock, I begin the ritual of getting ready. A long bath with the lavender salts Frank gave me for Christmas years ago, but I'd been saving for special occasions that never seemed special enough. Hair washed and styled, makeup applied with more care than I've taken in months. The blue dress fits perfectly, skimming my figure in ways that are flattering rather than revealing. Standing in front of my full-length mirror, I see someone I'd almost forgotten existed. Not the young woman I was when I met Frank, but not just the grieving widow either. Someone in between, mature, yes, marked by loss, certainly, but also vibrant and hopeful and ready for whatever comes next. The drive to Salvatore's feels different from last night's treacherous journey through the storm.
Tonight, the roads are clear, the evening warm, and I arrive 10 minutes early with my heart beating fast but steady. Billy's car is already in the parking lot, and through the restaurant's window, I can see him at a corner table, studying the menu with the same careful attention he probably once gave to engineering blueprints. He stands when he sees me approaching, and the smile that spreads across his face is worth every moment of nervous preparation. He's wearing a navy blazer over khakis, and his hair is freshly cut, making him look distinguished and handsome, and somehow exactly right. Maggie. He takes my hands in both of his, studies my face as if memorizing it. You look beautiful. Thank you, and thank you for the orchid. It's gorgeous. I'm glad you like it. I thought about roses, but they seemed too... He pauses, searching for the word. Traditional? Presumptuous, he finishes. Orchids felt more like a beginning than a continuation. The waiter seats us at a table by the window, where we can watch the evening settle over the downtown district. The candle between us casts warm light that softens the lines around Billy's eyes and makes everything feel intimate and special. How was your day? I ask as we settle into our seats. Productive. I cleaned out Helen's craft room. He says this simply, but I can hear the weight behind the words. Donated most of her supplies to the elementary school. Kept a few things, the good scissors, some fabric she never used. But it feels good to have that space be a room again, instead of a memorial. That must have been difficult. Easier than I expected, actually. I kept thinking about what you said yesterday, about donating Frank's coins, how it felt like letting go, but also freeing. He unfolds his napkin with careful precision. I think being with you is helping me see the difference between honoring Helen's memory and being trapped by it. The waiter appears to take our drink order, and Billy defers to me with the kind of old-fashioned courtesy that feels charming rather than patronizing. We order wine, a bottle of Chianti that we'll share like a celebration of this new understanding we're building between us. Tell me about your children, I say, when we're alone again. You mentioned daughters in Seattle. His face lights up. Emma and Sarah. Emma's a pediatric nurse, married with twin boys who are turning me gray with their video calls. Sarah's an architect, just finished her master's degree. They're both worried about me living alone, but they're too far away to hover the way they'd like to. Do they know about me? About tonight? I told them I was having dinner with a friend. He grins sheepishly. I wasn't ready to explain about blind dates and sandstorms and spending the night at a woman's house after knowing her for 6 hours. Because it sounds crazy when you put it like that. Because it sounds wonderful when I put it like that, and I'm not ready to share something this precious with anyone else yet. Precious. The word hangs between us like a promise. Our wine arrives, and Billy raises his glass in a toast. 2 sandstorms, he says solemnly. 2 sandstorms, I agree, clinking my glass against his. And to people brave enough to drive through them. The wine is perfect, smooth and warming, loosening the last of my nervousness about this second evening together. We order dinner, but the food becomes secondary to the conversation that flows between us like a river finding its course. Billy tells me about his work, 40 years of designing bridges and buildings that still stand across the Southwest. I tell him about my years as a librarian, about the satisfaction of helping people find exactly the book they didn't know they were looking for. We discover we both love crossword puzzles, but approach them differently. He works methodically from one across to the end, while I skip around, filling in the words I know first and letting the pattern reveal itself gradually. That's very telling, Billy says, twirling pasta around his fork. You're comfortable with ambiguity, with not knowing how things will turn out. Are you? He considers this seriously. I'm learning to be. Helen's illness taught me that not everything can be planned or controlled, but I still prefer clear blueprints to improvisation. And yet here you are, on a second date with a woman who drove you through a sandstorm on impulse? Here I am, he agrees, and something in his voice makes me look at him more closely. There's an intensity in his expression that wasn't there at the beginning of the evening, a seriousness that makes my pulse quicken. Billy, what is it? He sets down his fork and reaches across the table to take my hand. Maggie, I need to tell you something. My heart stutters. Here it comes, the revelation that will change everything, the complication that will make this beautiful new thing impossible. I'm falling in love with you, he says simply. The words hit me like a physical force, not the complication I expected, but something infinitely more terrifying and wonderful. Billy, I know, it's too soon. I know it's crazy. We've known each other for 36 hours, most of which we've spent dealing with natural disasters and borrowed clothes. His thumb strokes across my knuckles. But I haven't felt this way since I was 22 years old, and Helen smiled at me across a college lecture hall. How do you feel? I whisper. Like I've been holding my breath for 3 years and can suddenly breathe again. Like the world has color instead of just shades of gray. He pauses, studying my face. Like I want to build something new instead of just maintaining what's left from before. Tears I didn't expect are threatening to spill over. I'm scared. Of me? Of this. Of how fast it's happening. Of how right it feels when it should feel wrong. I take a shaky breath. Of losing it once I've let myself have it. Maggie. Billy's voice is gentle. Look at me. I meet his eyes across the candlelit table, and what I see there is steady and sure and completely without reservation. I'm not going anywhere, he says. Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I'm not the kind of man who runs when things get complicated or difficult. Helen's cancer taught me that love isn't about perfect timing or ideal circumstances. It's about choosing to stay, day after day, regardless of what life throws at you. And if I can't say it back yet, if I need time to catch up to where you are, then I'll wait. I waited 2 years to meet you, Maggie. I can wait as long as you need to feel safe with this. The pianist in the corner begins playing The Way You Look Tonight, and several couples move to the small dance floor. Billy notices me watching them. Would you like to dance? He asks. Dancing with someone who isn't Frank to a song that Frank never held me to. Another first, another small step away from the woman I was and toward the woman I'm becoming. Yes, I say, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. I'd like that very much. Billy helps me to my feet and leads me to the dance floor. His hand settles at the small of my back, and I place my palm against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. We move together slowly, finding our rhythm, learning the shape of each other in this new context. You're a good dancer, I murmur against his shoulder. Helen taught me, said if I was going to step on her feet, I might as well do it in time to the music. I laugh and feel him smile against my hair. We sway together as the song builds to its crescendo, and I realize this is what contentment feels like. Not the absence of grief or fear, but the presence of something strong enough to hold both. When the song ends, we remain on the dance floor for the next one and the one after that. Other couples come and go, but we stay, learning the language of each other's bodies, building a new kind of intimacy that has nothing to do with grand gestures and everything to do with the simple trust of letting someone lead and be led in turn. Maggie? Billy's breath is warm against my ear. I have something to ask you, but I don't want you to feel pressured to answer tonight. I pull back slightly to look at his face. What is it? Will you marry me? The world stops. The music continues. Other couples keep dancing. But for me, everything goes silent and still, except for Billy's face looking down at me with absolute seriousness and infinite tenderness. Billy? I know it's crazy. I know we've known each other for a day and a half, but I also know that I've spent 3 years feeling half alive, and you make me feel whole again. His voice is steady, certain. I know that I want to wake up next to you and fall asleep next to you and argue with you about crossword puzzle strategies for whatever time we have left. You're proposing to me in the middle of a restaurant? I'm proposing to you in the middle of our second date on a dance floor while you're wearing the most beautiful dress I've ever seen and looking at me like I might be worth taking a chance on. He's right. I am looking at him like that, like he might be worth upending my careful widow's life, worth risking the safety of solitude for the terrifying possibility of love at 63. I need time, I say. I know. This is insane. I know that too. Billy Frank, you are going to turn my entire world upside down. Is that a yes? I look into his eyes, kind and certain and full of a hope that matches something growing in my own chest, and realize that my world has already been turned upside down. The question isn't whether to let it happen, but whether to fight it or embrace it. Ask me again tomorrow, I whisper. He spins me around the dance floor, laughing with pure joy, and I realize that tomorrow has already begun.